My name is Yueying. I came from China, and I'm currently a high school student in Allendale, Columbia. What I'm going to talk about today is sexual assault. It is like an elephant in a room. We all can see it, we all know it exists, yet we never talk about it. Talking about sex or sexual assault could be very embarrassing, but avoiding talking about it could put all of us in danger of being sexually assaulted without realizing it, especially for teenagers like me. Society does not expect teenagers to be sexually active. However, we are. In that case, lack of sex-related knowledge could be very dangerous, since sexual assault could occur anywhere, and anyone could be the next victim, including your teenage child. So let's talk about sex and sexual assault before it becomes too late. The reason why I want to talk about sexual assault is because a series of #MeToo exhibitions organized by victims were intentionally suppressed in my country. And the topic #MeToo has received extreme censorship in my country. It is not fair for the victims to lose their voices, I believe. So I started to prepare this speech to do as much as I can to help these victims to be heard. On December the 27th of last year, Shiroi Ito finally won a lawsuit almost 5 years after being raped. She is the first female victim in the history of Japan to take sexual assault in the workplace to the public court with her real identities revealed to the public. One victim has finally received the justice, but behind her, there are millions of sexual assault victims remain unknown and unheard. Do they have our attention? I talked to one of my friends when I was preparing the speech because she once told me about her experience of being raped when she was a teenager. She told me something that I never thought about. She said that sexual assault victims sometimes tend to silence themselves, and that is one major factor that causes the victims to lose their voices. Sexual assault victims are sometimes confused. They ask all sorts of questions to themselves. Was my skirt too short? Did I make it clear to him? He said he did it because he loved me. Am I making this too serious? Am I qualified to be a victim? The conversation between my friend and I reminded me one of my own experiences. About a year ago, my ex-girlfriend and I were experiencing a really heartbroken breakup. We were both emotional and irrational. One night before Christmas, she came to my house 3 o'clock in the morning, and what followed was an unwanted sexual penetration. I was very scared. I cried, and I tried to push her away, but none of those worked. I never thought of that experience as sexual assault. Because I loved her, I knew her very well, and we had sex before. But the conversation between my friend and I made me start to rethink what happened that night. If someone else had came to me and shared a similar story with me, I would immediately say that, well, you clearly rejected her. That was definitely sexual assault. But when it came to myself, I am confused. I am aware of the fact that sexual assault happens commonly between couples. And I even looked up statistics online that shows approximately 10 to 14% of married women are raped by their husband in the United States. And approximately 1/3 of women reported having unwanted sex with their partners. But when it came to myself, I am confused, because I don't really feel like being sexually assaulted. And right here, I'm standing on the stage trying to tell all of you that many sexual assault victims are not sure of the fact that what they experienced was sexual assault. But being a victim myself, I too am not confident with the fact that what I experienced was sexual assault. Am I qualified to be a victim? I don't know. See, it is really hard for the victims to truly believe what they experienced was sexual assault. Therefore, the victims need to be victims. They need to be certain, and that is the first step of breaking the silence. Every step afterwards is as hard as the first one. Harassment, shame, blame, all sorts of things followed when the victims finally have the courage to share their stories to the public. And that is another factor that is taking the voices of these victims away from the public. When my friend first told me about her story of being raped when she was a teenager, I was shocked. Should I suggest her to call the police after all these years? Should I comfort her by saying that the perpetrator won't get away with karma? Or should I just tell her to let it go? When my mind was blown by all these thoughts, I asked her perhaps the most stupid question of my entire life. I asked her, did you reject him? Did you say no to him? I could not believe that I asked that question. Especially I myself actually experienced unwanted sex, but I did. And unfortunately, that question I asked is one of the questions that most commonly asked when people are facing sexual assault victims. Instead of trying to find a solution or doing something less stupid, we tend to question the victims. What were they wearing? Why didn't they defend themselves? Why didn't they go to the police right after the incident had happened? We ask them all sorts of questions. And the reason why we do that is not because we want to figure out what truly happened. We ask these questions to them because questioning the victims seems easier than facing the truth that the person in front of us was raped. And we just want to get away with this sensitive topic as fast as possible. So we blame the victims for not being the perfect victims, and we almost forget that they are the victims. I struggled whether I should tell my own story or not when I was writing the speech. I want to share my own story, the ambiguity within it, and the complex feelings I have about it. But I was also afraid of being embarrassed. I know I did not do anything wrong, but still. In fact, I hardly talk about sex in public. The education I received, the social rules I learned do not allow me to talk about sex in public. Silencing sex-related topic is silencing voices of the sexual assault victims. According to research, up to 91.3% of the rapes gone underreported, let alone other forms of sexual assault. What made it so hard for the victims to receive the justice that they should receive in the first place? It is us. When we heard a sexually offensive joke but did not stop the person from telling it. When we watched an online video of a girl being raped. When we tried to avoid talking about sex in public. We're all building an invisible wall between the victims and justice, because we all could have done something, but we didn't. I know we usually feel like it is really hard for individuals to make changes. Yes, it is. It is really hard to take the perpetrators to justice. It is really hard to prevent sexual assault from happening. It is really hard to solve problems within our society behind all these crimes. But we should at least try. So be brave. Stand up and speak out. Think about sex. Think about sexual assault. Talk about it. Teach our children about it. Educate people around us to respect other people's boundaries. Destigmatizing sex so that victims of sexual assault won't be humiliated to share their stories. Sex is not dirty or evil. Sexual assaults are. And let the victims to have our attention. So here's my question now. Do I have your attention now? Thank you.